everyone. Welcome to the 27th Annual Pistahan, where we celebrate Filipino culture. It is my honor and great pleasure to introduce our featured guest, Dr. Luisa A. Igloria, who was recently appointed by Governor Ralph Northam as the 20th Poet Laureate of Virginia, with a 2-year term from July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2022. Originally from Baguio City in the Philippines, Luisa is a professor of creative writing and English at Old Dominion University and was the inaugural Glasgow Distinguished Writer-in-Residence at Washington and Lee University. Various national and international literary awards include the 2019 Crab Orchard Open Competition Award for Poetry, the 2018 Center for the Book Arts Letterpress Chapbook Prize, the 2015 Resurgence Poetry Prize, the 2014 May Swenson Poetry Prize, the 2009 Ernest Sandin Poetry Prize, and more. Her newest book, Maps for Migrants and Ghosts, is forthcoming from Southern Illinois University Press in fall 2020. More info from luisaigloria.com. Welcome, Luisa.
Thank you so much, Aileen. It's a pleasure to be here with all these great, amazing writers. I'm very excited to join you all and your voices here. So I've selected some poems, especially for this reading. And I don't think maybe one of them is from a previous publication, but most of them are fairly new. So I'll just launch in. The first one is called I Come From. I come from a country where you can look at the sky and know what kinds of fish you'll find in the market. I come from a country where one blind man can lead another down the sidewalk, both of their canes tapping. I come from a country where old newspapers can be exchanged for compost, which helps the farmers grow their beans and cabbages. I come from a country where hands are useful. They plant rice, they harvest rice, they pick up steamed mouthfuls as other hands fight for land and water. I come from a country where the words save and salvage can mean abduct and murder, and assassinations take the place of drive-by shootings. I come from a country of long lines, long waits, long marches historically ending with death. But it is the same country where the light of fireflies along the length of an underground river is brighter than stars. I will read, my second poem is called And Honey. And honey, as in land off, or half the name my people gave this place when they imagined how it would feel to arrive at a destination different from one ordained at birth. It's easy to admire those who have no difficulty securing passage, easing into a tongue practiced in schools with toilets and running water. It's easy to shame those who believed the lies, who sold the family farm, the water buffalo, the agate beads and heirloom jars. Those who traded 2 seasons for 4, one leafed in russet and gold as vegetation entered into a long quietus they came to understand did not necessarily mean death. Apples redden and fall in 100 orchards, and bees propel themselves into a riot of flowers. All that must be gathered is nearly level with the earth and requires a bending. All I'm saying is some don't need to think twice, dipping the spoon into the sweet. Some walk the rows long after sundown, or lower the netting over their faces before counting the jars and hefting crates onto trucks. In this poem, well, I stumbled on a fun fact that there have been at least 5 or 6 female pharaohs in Egypt, and I thought that that was pretty cool. And I read up on one of them, and she appears in a cameo role of sorts in the next poem I'm reading. But this poem is really about eating with hands. Eating with hands. We were taught to eat with our hands, the whole hand, to scoop rice and fish with all the fingers and not just miserly thumb and index, scrawny bird beak pecking through gravel for leavings. A person who knows how to eat like this must be generous and forgiving, not afraid to get sauce and grease on their fingers, not ashamed to show who's boss of their own circumstance and lick the last traces of honey and salt or garlic. When I was a child afflicted with blisters and allergies, my mothers took turns coaxing me to eat a little more, distracting me with stories they'd shape small cubes and pyramids of sticky rice, hide bits of meat or vegetable inside like treasures buried with a pharaoh, who was sometimes, though rarely, a woman, like Hatshepsut, who despite a chronic skin condition, built temples and monuments, brought wealth of ivory and gold from other lands. Sometimes she wore a fake beard and a man's kilt just because she could. After she died, it's said her stepson tried to erase all official memory of her. Doesn't he sound like a hater? Whereas she is someone I can imagine tearing the meat of fowl from joint, relishing fruit, washing every mouthful down with a generous gulp of wine. So, okay, I'll read 2 more. And one I wrote in response to finding out that on an island in northern Japan, a man put up a phone book with a phone that doesn't work. And he started talking to his dead brother, who had, I think, dead cousin, who had passed away in the tsunami in 2011, I believe. And since then, people have been making pilgrimages to this phone booth to talk to their own beloveds who have passed away, just to go through the motions of this like conversation and to kind of feel like they have a line to the afterlife and talk to these people that they love. So this poem is called Phoning the Dead. A girl cries, "Are you there?" into her mobile, bites the ends of her scarf. She says her heart feels like it's going to burst. Are you there? On an island in Japan, in a town I can't remember, someone has put up a booth from which to call the dead. Hundreds have made this pilgrimage to pick up the receiver and speak into it or sing, while crows roost on its little roof, while rain or hail drums on the glass. There are flowers and a shot glass where someone once poured a drink, a dog-eared novel, an unused airline ticket. A man sits on a bench under the corner streetlight. He is waiting for the bus, or he will spend the night there in his thin coat unless the storekeeper and his wife take him in. Does he ever feel like his heart is going to burst? Maybe his heart burst long ago. Maybe there is only before and after the heart burst. And after the heart burst, where it actually burst, a page was added to the telephone directory. a loaf of bread disappeared from the shelf. So I wanted to end with a short poem from my book, Ode to the Heart Smaller Than a Pencil Eraser. And this is hopefully something that also speaks to that idea of hope, despite all the travails that we are all experiencing. So this poem is called Imperfect Ode. Give thanks for the wobble of the wheel and the limp of the pulley, the tiny pop in the heart of a light bulb as it goes out. Give thanks for the pause that loosens the noose around the rushing hours, for serifs of rain trickling down the blue gradations of a chain. And give thanks for the call of a dove that has lost its mate, and so tinges your day with the blue of this reminder. Forgive the stumble of the bow across the strings, the hair of one note that flies away from the score. Give thanks for our common imperfection.
Thank you so much, Luisa. There is just so much grace and power in your work, and I am amazed at how you are able to sustain it each and every time. Congratulations again on your appointment as Poet Laureate, following the footsteps of Rita Dove and Claudia Emerson. I just have a couple of questions for you.
Sure.
What are
And
you
those are big shoes to fill, so I'm really honored.
what are you hoping to accomplish as the new Poet Laureate of the state of Virginia?
Well, as I said in my acceptance speech on July 29, I haven't worked out the fine details yet, but I envision being able to hold more conversations with more people, more poets, more people in our different communities across the state. And I also said there that there's sort of this weird idea that poets who also teach, happen to teach in universities or colleges, that they somehow write an academic or theoretical type of poetry, which I feel is really not true, because poetry necessitates paying attention to the world, making sure that you are able to feel deeply. You need to be able to imagine yourself in the shoes of another. So you can't do that if you're, in some kind of weird tower, ivory or whatever collar, removed from reality. Perhaps one good thing about being in this pandemic is that we are exploring new creative ways to remain in touch with each other, even if virtually. So some things I find people are incredibly generous in this medium, in the virtual space. Things we were not able to do, people we were not able to invite before, we are now able to do that. So I'd like to foster the love and appreciation of poetry through different kinds of programs, like maybe panels, workshops, readings for sure. And I would like to set as a kind of general theme this sort of question about why are poetry and creativity so necessary in our lives, especially in our lives nowadays, which are marked by all kinds of exigency and urgency. So poetry is very much a part of what we can do as citizens also in response to the call for different kinds of civic engagement. And I know that sounds like a lot, and I'm going to be trying to unpack that idea, but I can only do it with the help of so many others. One person can't do it alone. So I'm not representing other voices. I would like to work with and alongside other voices and other poets.
How big a part does Filipino culture play in your identity as an American poet?
Oh, I don't think we can tease it out of the it's part of who I am. The configuration of who I am is both Filipino. I feel like I'm learning to be both still, and I think that the progression of our experiences in life is that sort of idea of hopefully learning to be better at everything that we imagine ourselves to be. So certainly there are certain things that distance allows us to see sometimes clearer. Being away from some place allows us to see things and our place in that configuration maybe a little clearer. There are things that I feel are difficult to recuperate or recover in exactly the same way. So it also feels like we live in that in-between space of being Filipino and being American, but I think that it's very difficult to take those two things apart. So I feel very much that my cultures play a part in shaping who I am as a person. And my themes are always somehow related to ideas of history, our place in it.
What advice can you give to young, aspiring Filipino poets?
Oh, well, so many things. Don't stop reading, don't stop writing. But also, I think, don't be afraid to feel deeply, because it seems that to me, sometimes people view vulnerability as a weakness, whereas I don't think it is. It can really be a source of beautiful power because it lends that edge of authenticity to our voices and our experiences. So I hope that that's useful to poets out there.
Thank you.
I'm still learning the lessons myself. I keep learning the lessons myself.
Thank you so much, Luisa. You are an inspiration to us all, and you honor every Filipino with your words and your works. Mabuhay ka.
Thank you. Mabuhay din kayo.
Friends, for the first time ever, we are celebrating the Pistahan virtually. Also, for the first time ever, the Pistahan is presenting a special poetry reading on themes of healing, hope, and sheltering. I'm your host, Aileen Cassinetto, Poet Laureate of San Mateo County. We have a stellar lineup of Filipino poets, so without further ado, please welcome Cynthia Buiza, poet, strategist, and executive director of the California Immigrant Policy Center. Cynthia also currently serves as a California State Commissioner with the Milton Marks Little Hoover Commission for State Government, Organization, and the Economy. Welcome, Cynthia.
Everybody, good afternoon. And I just want to say first to Aileen, thank you so much for creating this space. It's so amazing to be part of a community, which gives me joy. Because I say that my day job is very hard. As you know, I'm an immigrant rights advocate, and we've been fighting this administration's terrible policies against our communities. So while that job gives me a sense of purpose, literature and especially poetry within this community gives me a great sense of joy, and to be with you, it's a sense of comfort. So thank you for letting me be part of this. I'm going to read three very short poems, which is basically, lately I've been writing on the themes of women and their struggle with identity, history, and memory, and the triumphs that we try to shore up at the end. So the first one is called Unsheltered. And it is actually based on a book that I'm reading from Elizabeth Hardwick. It is July. This is what I have decided to do with my life. Survive. The harsh light slanting through my window, arrow headed for a bullseye, me at the center, leaning towards oblivion, alert as I target, eager to live. Walk, stealing the souls of Montana roses in my wake, grateful for their beauty and indifference. Nothing is ever lost between us. It is just as well. Move to a hostile climate, all the better to never ever want anything again, because certain dreams died long ago in a country oblivious to its ghosts. Still, the revolver heart of this chaos rising and falling in my chest. Tuned to the hours and days, I cry, when will this be over? When will this be over? Exhale. And the next one is called The Song of the Spider Woman, for those days where we weave and weave and weave. It was the faint echo of nothing, or was it nothingness, that startled her. She looked up, certain the thread on which she is balanced shook. These are her days, an accumulation of silk, but also silt, the better to diffuse the myth of the all and mighty weaver. No one really understands how fragile everything is. How else to countenance the existence woven of slim threads? What other stake for iron resolve takes all of her? Spinnerets moving in and out of her body, thin accordion movements that make life. Sometimes she forgets to look up, like today, where she just kept going night, day, light, dark, storms and seismic shifts from the ground below. It was dusk when she finally emerged from her mighty efforts. It pleased her that when she surveyed her handiwork, her cobweb was just as well, thin but tensile, yielding to the breeze, spanning 2 trees, ghostly canopy for the woman who walks below. And the last one is called Grace. Quote, I rest in the grace of the world and I am free, by Wendell Berry. The hummingbird flies on to and from the reed, just enough to remind her that the reed can bear it. The baby lands on the pool and floats right before panic weighs her down. The wings of the 737 flap at just the right angle to give it lift. Tears pause behind my eyelids just in time to stop a deluge. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Cynthia. Thank you for your poetry and for tirelessly advocating on behalf of the immigrant community. Our next guest is Dr. Melinda Luisa de Jesús, Associate Professor and former Chair of Diversity Studies at California College of the Arts. The editor of Pinay Power, Feminist Critical Theory, she writes and teaches about Philippine American culture, girl culture, monsters, and race ethnicity in the United States. The author of 6 chapbooks and the poetry collection Feminology, her writing has appeared in various journals and anthologies, including Delinquents and Debutantes and the Journal of Asian American Studies. She is a mezzo-soprano, a mom, an Aquarian, and admits to an obsession with Hello Kitty. Welcome, Melinda.
Hi, everyone. Aileen, thank you so much for inviting me. Can you guys hear me okay? The series of poems I'm going to read are mostly Naku. And I've been trying to, in the middle of this pandemic and everything else going on, just kind of record what's going on in my life. So that's the theme. The first one is called March 30. Zooming in from China and Truckee, from Dallas, Oakland, San Jose, my students seem okay so far. We discuss the syllabus, grading, finals, but I really want to ask, Have you eaten? Are you sleeping? Are we safe? For how long? This next poem is for a mentor, actually from Lehigh Choir, who we lost to COVID. For Stephanie, 1. It felt so far away. Now it's marked us irrevocably in sorrow. 1 down, but how many more? 2. 6 feet apart, 6 feet under, full fathom 5. If we're still alive, this is our sea change. To remember, to witness, to mourn. And this one goes along with the poem for Stephanie. It's called COVID Spring. The cruelty of nature is that. The beauty of nature is that. Amid all the death, fear, finger pointing, the bees buzz, woodpeckers peck, hidden seeds emerge triumphant, with tender buds set. Life goes on, life goes on. This next poem is called Empire of Care, which is a riff on Kathy Sinisa Choi's book, and this is a work in progress. Pinoy nurses on the pandemic front lines, their formidable reputations, skills celebrated, deployed against an evil menace lurking everywhere, soldiers in this epic battle. Do you know their names? Call them heroes, but they are family, parents, cousins, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, daughters, sons. Say a prayer for their safety, honor their sacrifice, and wear your mask. This next poem is part of a sculptural piece I made for Aileen called Requiem for My Pre-COVID-19 Life, or Keep Your Worries in Here. And the here was a container of CBD that I've been having used because I've had incredible insomnia since March. 1, I'm not sleeping well, so I make lists. Things I miss, seeing friends, seeing colleagues, teaching face-to-face, singing in my choir, travel, parties, community. Things I'm grateful for: health, healthcare, family and friends, pets, gardening, employment, music, CBD. 2, we will never be the same. Don't forget who we once were. Don't forget how love defines us in this morning, our new normal. And finally, hi, Naku for 2020. I alone can fix it. Motherfucker, you break it, you bought it. You broke us. And yet, we're not broken inside like you. We don't give up on us. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Melinda. Just so powerful and a great way to chronicle this time period. Thank you so much. Our next reader is Reme Grefalda, the founding curator of the Asian, American, and Pacific Islander collection at the Library of Congress, and the founder of Our Own Voice Literary e-zine and QBD Inc. Theater Group. She is the author of Bearing More Than Soul, among other works. She is currently based in Chicago. Welcome, Reme.
Can you hear me? You know, this is my only second Zoom experience. I don't know what I'm seeing. I don't know how I'm seeing. So I'm going to try my very best here, okay? I'll be reading 3 poems. Hopefully it fits the theme. Most of the poems are untitled. Servant of the silent night, how tenderly you gather the echoing folds of twilight, how they silhouette you, slow on the slope, pressing footprints swallowed by the hills. This we dread, this emptiness you leave behind. Are we to stand rock solid firm and single-hearted? For here we are, trounced and thrown off course like leaderless sails. Within this tremulous wheezing that heaves and haws into wasteland without end. Dispense your word, O Lord of glory, your promise of a light so blue to burrow through the rock-black darkness, even as we stumble, reaching for the answer, blazing in your eyes. Who arrives at the plateau, fully aware that wisdom will be dispensed only to those in the throes of asking? You may hear, but have not the heart to listen, much less the will to act. Better that you walk away disappointed, resentful even. In this manner, you arrive on your own, armed with a fighting smartness, accountable only to yourself and only to your needs. There is never a best way, nor a sure way. There's only loss or learning, aloneness or atonement. Whoever you hurt will heal. Whoever you chastise will scar. With patience comes tenderness. Understanding is not far behind. While tending your wounds, you mend the world. When you said, get up and walk, we couldn't. Awed as we all were, why was it so hard to take that first step? It took your touch, the warmth to lift, the hold to pull my stubborn foot out of the clutch. Odd as I was, and still am, I never thanked you. I simply walked away. Thank you.
Thank you for your decades-long advocacy and service to our communities. This is a belated thank you. You have done so much to amplify the voice of Filipino Americans and Filipinos in the diaspora. So we really owe you a lot. Thank you so much, Reme. Our next reader is an award-winning poet and visual artist who was born and raised in the Philippines as a military child. She has 2 published books of poetry by Astrolabes and Constellations and The Art of Exporting. She was a reader and panelist to the Isang Mundo, Humanity, Diversity, and Resistance in the Arts at the 5th Filipino-American International Book Fest in San Francisco last year, and received a Literary Champion Award to attend the 2020 News and the Marketplace Literary Conference in Boston this year. And I understand that Cristina is about to receive an award this evening from Florida. Tell us more about it, Cristina.
Thank you for mentioning that. It's the Florida Authors and Publishers President Book Award. I was a finalist and there's like 3, so the very least I'll get 3rd place, I guess. And they'll make the announcement 6:30 tonight, so I'll let you know. Thank you. I want to say thank you, Aileen, for inviting me. And it's great to see everyone here. Familiar faces, familiar voices. I want to say 1, 2, 3, 4 out of all of you have been on my podcast, your Artsy Girl podcast. And Melinda, you were doing Hainaku, and that was Aileen. She was on my podcast too. And I want to extend an invitation to Cynthia, Reme, and Angelica. Please do submit to the podcast. I'd love to have you on. So there you go. As far as the pandemic is concerned, I have not been able to write any real major work on that. I think it's just too close to me right now. I think it needs to, I need to do some reflection after a while. But I've been doing art in exchange for all that, for some expression. So the poems that I want to share with you today on regards to the theme, you know, hope and healing, I want to read a couple of poems from my 2 collections, by Astrolabes and Constellations. And I want to say, Luisa wrote the wonderful blurb for me back here, and I appreciate her so much. And congratulations, Luisa, for your new post there. You make us all so proud. So let me go ahead and read my first poem. It's called Life Without Sugar. Imagine heart-bent days without saviors, the world headed by arithmomancy, a world without Neruda's neologisms, his leaning into the afternoons, his talking about sweetness always. Imagine not tasting the granulated grievances of the gods. Gluttony becomes too much. Despair becomes decorous. What would we be doing staring into the sugar bowl? What right would we have? Delectable the days can be without processed predicates, oily fascinations of casual observers. We are blind not to savor pure sunrises from the interstate. Real chronicles are in cookie jars. Gourmet wrapped fancies flower in your orchard. Bestow honeycombed catacombs, vestiges of casabas and star apples. All encompassing succulence surrounds you now, to be blessed like this. And my next poem is a short poem. It's called Pockets. But there are pockets more permanent where things are kept. Things that were handed to you, a piece of sugar cane fresh from the market, grandfather's handkerchief, tender messages on the back of matchbooks. But there are pockets more invisible where you keep things too, such as the constancy of tides, elapsed sketches of reverie, above all, love at the center of time. So that's that. And the next is my first chapbook published by Dancing Girl Press, The Art of Exporting. So I just want to share with you, this chapbook goes more in line with the theme, so thought I'd read a couple of poems in here. The first is The Anomaly of Physics. What fills this place with old weapons? Are longitudes and latitudes of a time and place, prevailing marks that never leave us. On the clothesline of balance, stars could be taken by negligence or by distorted glances at the mural of the deceased. But the telescope points skyward into bedrooms, offices, alleyways. As we get closer, sharpness is dulled. Spend all our lives calculating, one turn of a misaligned planet, a contorted moon, makes us unable to move beyond a fixed position where we annihilate ourselves and abandon our lovers. Lucid gowns pulled over sullen cities, establishes the contentment of basis in fact. Laws of gravity become null and void to the dying and naked infants pure. Next one is Tilling the Tears. Words above your head float like buffeting angels, making shapeless days smooth. In a china shop, teapots and rice bowls sit unmoving during a tremor, like inductor of light, stand cryptic at the phrase of summer. Tender tendrils dangle, ineffectual light, indistinguishable and distant. How to move new and old things in and out of yourself glibly? This is the way to till the tears, the way to beat the rice stalk for its harvest. For you are in a heaven where angels assemble, and on earth's floor with beggars and thieves. And the last poem is entitled Midheaven. Uncovering impressions and warm spots of heroes who left to conquer other lands more verdant. 1 million attempts to avert desk alone, a lost homeland never recovered. Of turned beds and turned hearts, once full of charity, warmness trapped within the sheets. Open palms now closed, too frail to hold any light, for the eyes are heavy, looks away from the door. There will be no soldier at the gate, no mother waiting, no child wanting, just shadows passing, forever passing. There will be no one to administer, no one to trespass. Finally still from all the distance. Thank you all.
Cristina, thank you so much. Those are some of the loveliest and most tender imageries I've heard. Thank you so much. You know, everyone, Cristina is one of the staunchest supporters of Filipino artists and writers. Thank you so much. Our next reader, Angelica Ferrer Recierdo, is a first-generation Filipina-American. She is a medical writer and editor based in San Francisco, California. She holds an MS in narrative medicine from Columbia University and a BS in nursing from Northeastern University. Her creative writing can be found in The Intima, a journal of narrative medicine, Tendon, Literary Orphans, among others. Please welcome Angelica.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I wanted to share a few words, a message about the pandemic from a healthcare perspective. I've lived in San Francisco for 1.5 years now, but before that, I lived my whole life in the Northeast. I've always loved writing, but for a time, I was a nurse too. And when the pandemic hit New York City hard in April, and I read about 24-year-old new grad nurses writing their living wills, I thought about how the universe spared me. I felt guilty for having the skills needed to save lives, but not working on the front lines. And my mother is a nurse right now for COVID patients, and many of her coworkers are getting infected. And the Filipino-American mortality rate from COVID is 40% currently, compared to the nationwide rate of 3.6%. So our communities are suffering and grieving. And I'm thankful to be in virtual community here through Pistahan to provide respite through poetry. My first poem is called Standard Time. I wrote it when I first moved across the country and left my family. Right now, my parents are getting older in a part of today that I don't know yet. I am 3,000 miles away from my seat at the kitchen table, next to mom's chismes and dad's fish sauce. My niece is 2/3 my size now, making self-portraits that throw me. She stumbles over the syllables in California when she asks me why I left everyone. Friends and family are hurting, growing, without me there to watch and hold. Do they feel my heart beaming through the voicemail and grainy video call? Maybe love is scrolling a little slower on their posts. Then you, I ask time to be kind and let the hours stretch like my leg over yours. Your mind to waste the day exquisite. I'll frequent the worlds we fashion out of square feet and city blocks until your laugh is in the same room as me again. Ode to immigrant parents. My dad waits in the parking lot when I am in grade school, so I don't have to walk a block home. He waits in the parking lot when I am on my first date at the movies with the first of boys who don't care. My dad waits in the parking lot when I am 16 at Victoria's Secret, buying my way into womanhood. He waits in the parking lot of Rutgers while I am earning college credit to use at a school far away from him. My dad waits in the parking lot of a train station or airport to receive me from a city I'm contracted to. He waits to hear about a degree or a job he doesn't understand, as long as you're happy and work hard, anak. We wait in the rental car parking lot in SFO. He starts the ignition as I hold back homesick tears. He waits for me to finish crying about new beginnings, and I flip through the radio until we are both humming to the same song. Mom is a med-surg nurse. Grace under pressure, the same firm voice she uses with her children, is the same one she uses to tell a doctor he was wrong. She's healed bodies on 3 decades. When I ask her scared, she tells me about patients with AIDS in the 90s and how a patient is a person first. Like making do with what's left in a pantry, her hospital adds telemetry and dialysis patients to her rotation. Better than the patients with COVID, Mom. We spell out a word I know my niece doesn't know, in case she's listening to us make unthinkable plans. My speed dial list for the revolution are all people who can get down, who can tell me with a drink or plate, a joint or dance between us what the world has done to them. They know the taste of hot tears, that gaslighting can feel like wooing. We hold our degrees and passports close, include the ancestors in the acceptance speech. Your back is an email or a repost. It's a grabbed hand at the protest, the group chat dreaming beyond paychecks, Google Doc collective, money transfer to the barrio. I think liberation is my homegirl's laugh when no one is in her for once. Housekeeping. The room where my abuser lived in is now full of clutter. There's a vault under heaps of children's clothing and grade school, binders of colonization and pre-algebra, utility bills and perfect attendance certificates tacked on the wall, next to plaques commemorating my mother's obedience to her employer. There's the shelf with, "I hope Mom and Dad don't divorce," penciled in after the affairs. Right above it is a bathroom where on days when the pipes are full with family secrets, a wet patch forms, as if the house is weeping for us. Travel restrictions. Measuring time by how quickly a plant dies and a mask dries, there were other days when I would flip my hair on Mom's face, breathe in Dad and his musky coat, all minutes after touchdown in Newark. A communal container of chicken adobo in the back seat to warm my lap. Love's questions. How was your flight? What do you want to do today? And eat? The only things hanging in the air. This next one is about dancing. I'm a salsa dancer and it's a pre-COVID poem. For 3 minutes I am yours. I don't know your name, but you are threading my arms and legs to the strum of the requinto, pressing on my waist, signaling me to sway my hips to the bounce of bongos and ocean away. You dip me, flip me, make an inner siren in a dress come out to play. I spin 2-3 times, and other dancers make room to watch what bodies on a hardwood floor can do. A crowded club empties in the right arms. When it is good, there is no counting or open eyes, as it is in cooking or loving. Hands catch hands without a plan. An equation is balanced in the geometry of footwork and bent knees. I know the job is done when we part with gratitude, bow to a performance that can never be recreated. You laugh and towel the work and sweat off your face, and I spend the night finding the smiles you left in my hair. This one is also a pre-COVID poem about getting your nails. The salon. Women in rows, one row at the feet of the other, like shoe shiners at airports that no one makes eye contact with. To be in the business of limbs, digits, and paint is to make yourself tired, making tired women beautiful. The Vietnamese woman in front of me is a sculptor, polishing dead skin to present to me a smooth new part of my body. I thank her, pay her for tenderly touching me in ways some lovers can't even do, won't even do. The Salvadoran woman in front of me is a surgeon. Wielding a tweezer, she softens and plucks the cuticle. She plucks my story out and we laugh together in Spanglish. We celebrate colors with the 5 o'clock news in the background. Acetone in our noses, my hand rests on hers as she works. This one is about my housemate and getting to know her better during quarantine. The women make pina coladas just because. Spoon and stir the coconut milk and rum back together, like the stories they cling to. A merciless calendar hangs on the wall, a week of life claimed in too shore ink. Outside the 12th hour of sun eclipses, bone broth secrets are traded, laughter howling as one pulls out a scandal and prized chicken feet from the freezer. Community is our contributions to the fire, an offering of my hurt with her whole clove, boiling the lessons of herbs, shaving trauma until it's a whole hot cup of glistening something only a woman knows how to story and jar, for the kind of life-giving meal that shows up generations later, healed. And this last one, thank you for listening, is about the first night that California went into shelter in place. The night California went inward, I did too. I scanned my body, asked it to keep working for when the world stops. I blessed an organ or 5 and reimagined my juiciest hugs. I wiggled my toes like how I've asked patients when I thought they couldn't walk anymore. Made sure my tattoos were still there, tracing stories back to moments I committed ink to skin. I watered myself and thanked my hair for growing, apologized for ever wanting to tame it. Remember how you fly, I told my feet, for when the tumbao will call my name again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Angelica. If I were asked to describe your poetry in one word, I would say piercing. Thank you so much for sharing your works with us this afternoon. Our final reader this afternoon is Tony Robles. Tony is the people's poet. He was born in San Francisco and currently resides in Hendersonville, North Carolina, where he is the Carl Sandburg Writer-in-Residence. The author of numerous books, including Fingerprints of a Hunger Strike, Tony is also currently assistant publisher at The Cheerful Word. Welcome, Tony.
Angelica moved from the East Coast to San Francisco, and I moved from San Francisco to a place called Hendersonville, which is in Western North Carolina. And the other day, there was a smell that hit me. I was just walking down Main Street, and there was this smell that just came out of nowhere that hit me. And anyway, the poem is called Frisco to Hendo and Back. And Hendo is short for Hendersonville. Frisco to Hendo. There are reminders that tell you where you're at and where you've been. A city lives in your blood, and it becomes you. And as time goes by, you recognize it less. So you get away. There are mountains surrounding me, and on nearby farms, apples grow, throwing off fragrance. And I learn there are as many varieties of apples as there are people. And in the midst of the scent of apples, another scent hits. It smelled like the smell I smelled when I walked through Chinatown back home. The smell of fish and vegetables, the smell of soy sauce, oyster sauce, ginger, roast pork, steamed rice, the smell of steam oozing from manhole covers, the smell of tomato beef chow mein, beer, and cigarettes. The smell came and went. There ain't no Chinese people here that I am aware of anyway. It was a nudge, a reminder not to forget. I never told Chinatown that I loved it until now. Okay, and that's my Chinatown poem for Pistahan, right? Okay, and then let me just read just two more for you, and then I'll be done. I was working as a prep cook not long ago in a restaurant down the street. Actually, it was called the Wood Room. They cooked everything with wood. They had wood-fired pizza, and you know, I'd come home smelling like Duraflame, like Duraflame log, right? But anyway, this is called Tedium Rare. Prepping in the kitchen at the stainless steel table, a surface on which many things are chopped, grated, stirred, pulled, and blended. We are in a pandemic and must wipe things down. Jesús is to my right, Paquita to my left. Spanish words slip off their tongues, slicing air in the sizzle, hum, and hiss of the restaurant. I catch a word or two while slicing cheese and chopping raw bacon into cubes. It is tedious, this work. Tedioso in Espanol. My trigger finger doesn't help, the middle finger locked downward in a curl of pain to keep it from pointing upward. We are all essential workers. Made the mistake of entering through the front door. Employees are supposed to enter through the back or side door. I'll remember this next time, being an essential worker. Essentially, not essential enough to enter through the front door. Okay, and this last one is a poem. It's called Teeth. And we have characters here on Main Street and folks that have been here for a long time. And this is called Teeth. His teeth were gone, but he still smiled as if they'd never left. His tongue swirled and twirled tails, consonants and vowels melting into yalls and yalls. I come from 3,000 miles away with all my teeth in my mouth and a leaky gas tank. And he jacks up my car of 265,000 miles, lies on his back as if on some California beach. Let me take a look at it, he says. And as he reaches into the automotive underbelly, it rains, and the rain gets on his legs and shirt, and I run and get an umbrella. I think we're going to be able to help you out here, he says. Hand me that glue and tear me off a foot of that duct tape, would you, he says. And the rain continues to fall as I tear the tape with my teeth. And he's flat on his back, plugging up that leaky glass line. You know, he says, I knew this here guy who hurt his hand at work. His hand wasn't good no more, so I made him a guitar out of a cigar box. And you know, that boy could play that guitar. Reminded me of Carlos Santana. Do you listen to Carlos Santana? Heard him way back during Woodstock. That ought to do it, he said, sliding out from under the car. Help me up, would you? If it gives you any more problems, we'll take you to a welding shop. I helped him up, semi-soaking wet, his smile covered by a wet surgical mask, his gray hair in a damp sweat, his tongue serving up words that still had a bite in Hendersonville. Right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Tony is a very well-known activist who comes from a long line of activists. His family's history, in fact, is deeply intertwined with the history of San Francisco, particularly the International Hotel in Manila town. Thank you so much, Tony, for all you do for our community. Thank you. Thank you so much, Luisa A. Igloria, Cynthia T. Buiza, Reme A. Grefalda, Melinda Luisa de Jesús, Cristina Querrer, Angelica Ferrer Recierdo, and Tony Robles for supporting and gracing this year's Pistahan. You are the heart and soul and the pride of Filipinos in the diaspora. Mabuhay kayong lahat.